That's why they do a sound check. Just like that, here we are.
Here we are.
Folks, Max Shank here with one of my closest friends, Mike Bledsoe. He's the absolute man, and he also is really good at embracing his feminine side, which I think is somewhat related to the main topic we're going to discuss today. You know, I just had James Clear on. We talked about habits, but today I thought we could go over the barriers that people have in terms of self-love and worthiness. And I know that this is an area that you really know a lot more than I do, which is why I'm so stoked to have you just kind of share what the most practical actions are for really releasing your former self.
Yeah.
That most likely will have a ridiculous amount of, let's just call them undesirable consequences that might hold you back.
There's layers to it too. It's like, oh, I've reached this new point of self-love and acceptance, and that's given me access to whole new ways of being and relaxation and, like, dare I say, abundance, if we want to get too woo.
Right.
But, you know, it's like, oh, life got way better, and then there's something that happens. You hit another ceiling, or I hit another ceiling, and I go, oh, well, what's that? Oh, there's a deeper thing to work on here. And I go, oh, okay, so, you know, I just even a week ago, laughing, talking to a couple of my buddies and going, there's levels to this shit, because people would look at my life from the outside and go, dude's got it all figured out. And even I look at my life and I go, shit's dope. And, oh, it can be better. There's another level to play with, which is great because I'm 38 and I'd get bored if there weren't.
Well, that's what makes life interesting, right? Is that you have there's always stuff that you can practice. I mean, that's my style. Is I love it when I'm just totally terrible at a skill. I'm actually learning to fence right now. Did I tell you about that?
Oh, no.
I'm taking fencing lessons.
Foil, epee, saber?
We're doing foil.
Okay. I did mostly foil back in the day.
Oh, shoot. Actually, you know what? I think we're doing maybe epee.
Which one is it? Can you stab them anywhere, or is it just...
Oh, you can stab anywhere.
That's epee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Foot, face.
Yeah.
And it's funny, as like I was telling you earlier, you know, my buddy has the funniest marketing tactic. It's sword fighting. If you don't already get why it's awesome, you're not going to.
Yeah. There's a book. I have a book club that meets once a week. I'm there about a quarter of the time. I started it, and we were just talking about how I'm rarely home. But
you don't have to impress me. I already know you know how to read.
Reading a book, and it was talking about fencers know how to think quickly and become good debaters. So, yeah, and so it was drawing the parallels between fencing and debate, and being able to think about something from different perspectives and being fast about it and all that. And since you fenced a bit, then you may already get that.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, really what I like about it is the level of precision that comes along with it. There's just sort of this like necessary precision that comes along, because in its essence, you're trying to stab the other guy before he stabs you. And the scoring area on the end of your sword is the size of your pinky.
Yeah.
And that is really the only thing that you got to worry about with your opponent, right? As long as he doesn't push that button, you're good. But there's this whole dance happening, and it really is a lot like a conversation. And in fact, even a lot of the terminology that my coach Dave will use is he'll say, you want to be the one who starts the phrase. I'm like, oh, interesting. And you know, there are all these different symbols within fencing that is very similar to a good conversation. And you know, the fencing for me is really fun because I love learning new skills, and I love testing myself in new ways, kind of like what you were saying before. You know, I like to say you hit these new horizons of ignorance, and you're like, wow, I really didn't know what the hell we were talking about before, and you just hit these different levels, and it keeps you excited and curious. And also, I think curiosity is a symbol of youth, just the same way that springiness is. So like a curious mind is a youthful mind, just the same way that a elastic and springy body is a youthful body. So having that correlation there.
Yeah, the childlike wonder.
Yeah, you have this sense of wonder that you're born with, and then over time it kind of just gets crushed because what ends up happening is it's not that cool anymore.
Yeah.
It's not that cool anymore to be like, oh, isn't it amazing like this? And
we don't want to look stupid, like you didn't know.
Well, you don't want to look stupid, exactly. But then, what do we have around us? Everything is a black box algorithm. We don't really know how it works. And there just isn't enough curiosity there to sustain people in an interested way. So they keep wanting to, as opposed to feeling like they have to. And I think that's maybe the biggest distinction that I can see between someone who is successful with habits and fitness and health versus someone who is unsuccessful. And it's that one person sees it as an I get to do this, and the other person sees it as an I got to do this.
Yeah.
So what have you found has been like maybe a good exercise or a good practice that really helps move the needle in that regard?
In what regard?
In terms of figuring out what is going to move you forward in terms of being the person that you want to be. So I guess what I'm saying is there are a lot of barriers to changing yourself and behavior change.
Yeah.
Tons of barriers.
Yeah.
So I try to always bring it back to what's the action. How do you start with something like that?
So my process is if I want something to be different in my life, if I want to reach a new goal, then I write about who I have to be. Who's the type of person who does the thing. And so I approach it from an identity perspective.
Interesting.
And so because I've tried to do a lot of, I've studied a lot of habit change, goal setting, all this type of stuff.
A lot of smart people out there talking about that. I mean, even James Clear had the same thing to say about identity.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where for years it was like, okay, if you want to change a habit, then it's easier to exchange a habit instead of like
create a new one.
Instead of create a new one or to stop a habit, you got to trade it out for something. And I did all that stuff for a long time.
Depends what you believe too, right? If you believe that thing, then it probably won't work, right?
Believe what thing?
So like if you believe that it can't work if you do something a certain way, then it'll probably be true.
Yeah, I mean, just having a process in itself is helpful, right?
Can be.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, I believe in the process, so the process will work.
Right.
And so, so my process is going down the identity level. And to take on a new identity, usually an old identity has to go away.
Sure does.
It has to die. And because it's one thing that, because we have the belief part, right? So there's beliefs that form the identity. But the thing is that beliefs are really tricky. The mind is really, really sneaky. We could also call it the ego. It's really, really sneaky in that it won't tell you overtly what it is that the belief that's in the way, because it protects it, because it's protecting itself.
The ego is really a status quo protector and justifier. Your ego pretty much exists to say, we're the best, everything we do is true, this is what we are, and this is good, and we like this.
Yeah, loves to compare to other people as well. And,
right.
And you're right, protector, the word protector is huge. And some of the training I do is we go deep into protectors. And so if we can highlight what common protectors are, then go, oh, they're doing a thing. Protectors like folding your arms, like closing your body off as a protector. The inability to maintain eye contact as a protector. The use of soft talk. So maybes. Maybe we'll do that on
Softeners.
Friday. Yeah.
This one was tough for me. The arms crossed.
Oh yeah, for me too.
That's like the most standard trainer pose too.
Yeah,
if you're
I'm
into
closed off to
exercise.
anything you're saying to me.
Yeah. Well, also it makes your forearms look really big.
Yeah, you gotta like put the bicep out.
It's so funny how they do that. Everybody's got a picture like that.
Yeah.
When they started.
Oh, that's
training.
right.
Everybody.
Don't do a picture like that.
Don't cross your arms in your photo.
People do not want to approach you.
Don't cross your arms in general if you can avoid it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very sensitive to it now because I notice it right away. I'm like, oh, that person's totally closing themselves off.
Yeah, your body is indicating.
Why might they be doing that?
It's a reflection of what's happening in your mind. So we have
no doubt. I mean,
let's not just glaze over that because
yeah, exactly.
Someone could work on that for 1 year and their whole life will change. If they simply worked on keeping their body open.
Open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, protectors, lack of eye contact. Another one is one of my favorites. It's a phrase. I don't know. It comes out so fast. How many times you ask someone a question, they start, I don't know, and then they answer. And then they answer. But that's an automated response to protect. Right.
Well, and I don't know is the funniest phrase because it gets used that way like a reflex.
Yeah.
But then also, people are deathly afraid to admit that they don't know something that they feel they should.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, so when I talk to people about language, I remind them a lot of times when I'm speaking, I'll be in the front of the room speaking and I'll say, everything I'm saying to you is actually for me, just so you know. And so it's I forgot where I was going with that, but I don't know.
Right.
Is a protector.
Well, and you don't know how it's going to affect them.
Yeah, where I was going to go is it's a command. Yeah. So every phrase running through my head, and especially the phrases coming out of my mouth, is a command for myself. So I say, this is just for as much for me as it is for you, because as I'm teaching you this thing, I am teaching myself this thing. I'm reinforcing. And that's why there's some research out there that talks about, if you read something, you pick up 5% of it. If you write it down, it's 25% retention. And then the granddaddy is if you teach it, you'll retain 80%, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And so the protectors are a really good thing to know about when you're shifting an identity. So I go, okay, who's the type of person who does the thing? Well, because if I fully step into that identity, the behavior becomes automatic. And I've done this many, many times. And being able to shift identities and change identities is a practice in itself. You can get better at it and you can move more smoothly through it. So the first time someone gives up an old identity and takes on a new one, it can be very harsh. It's hard. It's a big thing. We don't experience a lot in our culture, but lots of rites of passage for men is up until that point, that is the hardest thing that person has ever encountered, and they literally think they're gonna die, and on the other side they're a man,
right?
And they give up the identity of boy, and now they are a man. And so one of the mistakes in our culture is, and it comes with language again, is we have infancy, toddler, child, whatever, adolescence, teenager, and then you're an adult. And then because we've assigned labels, an adult lasts for the rest of your fucking life until you're a senior citizen. And because we have
after adult.
Yeah. And so I think because of these labels, people just look, oh, I am who I am.
Right.
And that's not true. And so this is why I like things like spiral dynamics, is because it gives you a map of development as a human being that goes well beyond any after you turn 18. Right. So the shifting of identities is a practice, and it's something that you can get better at.
So it sounds like it requires two things. You have to be comfortable to let that old self die, and you have to really pour yourself into this new identity.
Well, I don't think I don't think it requires comfort. It requires courage.
Even better, yeah.
So I had an experience recently where I knew that I was going to have an identity shift, and it was going to be a drastic one quickly.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, and and so as it was approaching, I don't get nervous like I used to when I go into these things, but I remember having a little conversation with myself. I was like, "Oh, you're really doing it this time, aren't you, buddy?" And and an acknowledgement that it's gonna be a painful process. Because I think that it's and what I'm talking about is transformation. Transformation, there's many different levels of transformation.
No doubt.
There's the transformation of getting six-pack abs. There's the transformation of changing a belief, and then there's the transformation of identity. And identity is the deepest level of transformation I've been able to identify, or that I know how to work with anyway. And
it seems like the biggest change possible for a person to become a different person.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing about shifting identity is when you look back on your life previous to that shift, it seems like a different life, and it's hard to comprehend that I used to believe. There's all these beliefs that are tied to this identity. So this is why I like identity, is because there might be a dozen beliefs tied to one identity. You shift one identity, you shift a dozen beliefs.
Right.
And those dozen beliefs are in charge of 58 different behaviors. And then all of a sudden, everything looks different really quickly, and people look at you and go, "How did you do it?"
So you are basically saying that the identity shift is King Domino.
Yeah.
That knocks the rest of them in a congruent way with this identity shift.
Yeah. And so it's unpredictable. Here's the thing about identity.
It's kind of like middle out.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm always looking for what's the highest leverage thing I can do.
Oh, well, you and I are very similar in that regard, because obviously we come from a long lineage of lazy achievers.
Absolutely.
Because we're always looking, how can I get the most for the least? But then hopefully you go on that bell curve, right? Where you do what we're talking about, where we discover what specific actions we can do that just move the needle really hard. We're like, oh, this is awesome. And then we cross that bell curve and we go, oh, that's not the point, to get the most for the least anymore.
Yeah.
It's actually to enjoy the experience the most. Yeah. But I think you want to gain the skill of what things move you in the direction you want, so that you can enjoy the process more.
Shifting identity can be like an intense process, but it's the easiest thing to do. It gets you the biggest result.
For the least effort.
Yeah, for the least amount of effort. And I personally enjoy it. To me, the shifting of identities is a game.
Yeah.
And anytime someone starts taking transformation seriously, get a nice little chuckle. I was like, oh, they just don't know yet. It's like, or it's like, or if I'm taking on a new identity, people are like, oh, you want to be like that. I'm like, well, why not?
Right.
Like, we're only here, like, I can only prove that we're here one time. And, I'm going to make the most of it, because I'm having a great time already. But, like I said, I get bored.
Well,
and get bored. Let's do something big.
Do you think a lot of people feel that way, but maybe society doesn't encourage that type of behavior? I mean, we even have a term called flip-flopper for when people change their minds, let alone change their whole identity. Yeah. So there's definitely a social or cultural pull to homogenized people.
Yeah, did you hear growing up, oh, they changed?
You've changed, man.
Like totally. It's a bad thing. So that's ingrained
personally, like tons of times. Oh, you've really changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot.
Yeah. And so it's a thing, where that's ingrained real deep. Is like, oh, I'm afraid to change. But here's the thing about shifting identity. It can be a very scary process. Well, here's the thing: is I like to journal about it. I'll go through the process a little bit. I journal about who that person is, and I create mantras around it. So I create a bunch of I am statements to support that. I read them. I like to write them in the mornings. And I know that I've won. I know that I'm doing a really good job is when I wake up in the morning and the I am statements are the first things that are in my conscious awareness when I wake up. And I go, because I'll wake up and I'll write them out immediately. So I'm training my mind to go there as soon as it gets into the waking state.
Right.
And then, you know, being in the dream state, and the dream state is supporting what's happening in the waking state. And it's a really, really fun process. Now, shifting identities is no joke. You know, I do find it, I find it pretty funny. And funny. But, you know, when you do it, you're now, because you're going to be different, one of the things that other people, including myself, like we hate change. Like when something does not perform as expected, we get upset. And so what's going to happen is when you shift your identity, you're now going to be different to everybody around you. Right. That's how you know you've achieved transformation. If you think you've transformed in some way and people aren't pissed about it or treating you differently, you didn't do that. You actually didn't transform. You just got high for a weekend at a fucking workshop or something, right? Right. And so people are expecting you to behave a certain way. And so that can be scary too, because now you may get a troll or a hater or whatever you want to call it, and people can be like, oh my God, Max, you fucking changed. So disappointed. Oh, yeah. It's like, okay, good. Yeah. You know?
That's a good fear to overcome, isn't it? Is that fear of judgment. I mean, that's probably one of the most deep primal barriers to changing your identity is the fear that you will be cast out from the group, because we are social creatures, and putting yourself at risk of being exiled from the social group is just as big of a risk as death.
Well, the fear of judgment from other people is judgment of self. And that judgment of self is the fear of not being accepted. And that being accepted, if you can get to where you fully accept yourself, you don't need the validation from the outside.
Right, then you don't care.
Then you don't care.
Exactly.
So it's like, oh, I love me. I accept me. Right. So if someone else doesn't, who gives a shit? I'm the only one that can really give that to me anyway.
Right.
If you're afraid of what people are going to think about you, then you are going to be in a perpetual state of fuck.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Because you're always going to have that. You're never going to live up to everyone else's standards.
And there's always going to be someone a little better to compare yourself to.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, relying on validation outside of yourself is, fucked up. I mean, and I still find myself falling into that. You know?
Of course, it's really difficult to you don't exist in a vacuum. You know, we do the best we can to relinquish the hold of external sources as sources of our own happiness. I mean, Marcus Aurelius talked about that ad nauseum in Meditations. It's like, if you seek pleasure and happiness outside yourself, you're basically dooming yourself to a life where you're constantly grasping for something that is never really there. Yeah. And it's just an avoidance tactic to avoid having that uncomfortable alone time. Yeah. Where you really consider, it's like, well, why do I care about this? You know? And this whole idea, like we're talking about right now, of a full-on identity change, you know, I would recommend to anybody to give yourself some time to really line up your shot and see if what you want is for reasons that you actually believe in, or if maybe, which most people that I work with find, they're just doing a thing because they think people will love them if they do it. Yeah. They just go for that acceptance and love and
most people's goals are not their own goal.
Yeah, it's for the result rather than for the intrinsic enjoyment of the thing. And it's a bit ironic because the more you do that, the more people actually like that. When you're very authentic and true to yourself and you just live your best you, people are like, wow, that guy's like doing his thing. All right.
The people that are the easiest to love are the people who love themselves. And
we could probably stop right there, huh?
yeah. And I had this insight reinforced last week where I realized that I had been chasing a bit. And you know what's the least attractive trait?
Yeah.
You know, in business and romantic relationships, if you're chasing,
I need you, I need this,
Yeah.
I need it.
Yeah. Like if you need the money, like in business, if like you're coming at the conversation from needing money,
No chance.
people do not want to buy from you.
No way.
And if you are needing some woman or man to make you feel good enough, they're not going to be attracted to you. So the most attractive thing you can do is to relax, be cool, and love yourself, and people will be attracted to whatever it is you have going on. You are in that place, and you extend an invitation, and when that invitation is extended, the right people will opt in to your field, and the right people will opt out of your field, and you'll be a lot happier. And I've had a lot of people opt out of my field who I thought I wanted to be in it. But when they stepped out, I go, life's really fucking good without that person in my field. All right. I'm just going to keep doing this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how much of an effect that can have when you start living for yourself instead of living for how you hope others might perceive you.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing to me when I think about goal setting. Because I come at it at a little bit of a different perspective than you and James do with the identity. I think about it in terms of what do you like doing, and thinking more about, you know, rather than I'm going to think about what I actively want to be, just reflecting on what do I actually like to do, what actions do I enjoy so much that I would do them just for the sake of doing them.
Yeah.
And then you build out from there. And I definitely don't think there's a better way.
You're talking about preferences.
I'm really talking about like propensities. And I think preferences are as unique as fingerprints, you know, not only in terms of how much a person would enjoy it, but the effect that it might have on them. Powerlifting for one person might be an amazing addition to their life that makes them feel stronger and more powerful, increase their bone density, hormones, all that good stuff. And for another person, it could be like a catastrophic failure that gets them stuck in this loop of comparing how many pounds they can lift to all the people around them, and then they're never really satisfied. So it can manifest in a lot of different ways. So I think that I think it's beneficial if there's a way to interlink what you really enjoy doing just for the sake of doing it. Like if you were to get no credit is what I keep coming back to. Like if you were to get no credit, would you still do the woodworking, or would you still do the exercise if you would never get stronger and if no one would ever know that you did it?
Yeah. Yeah, and when it comes down to what I enjoy doing, what other people enjoy doing, is making sure that you're open to it shifting. Because I think a lot of times people, they do the thing that they love doing, or the thing they think they love doing. And then, you know, they get a year into it, and then it's the thing that's fucking them up the most. And so
totally.
like really being always on the lookout for, oh, I actually don't feel the same way about this thing I did a year ago, and giving myself permission to let that evolve.
So it sounds like what you're talking about really is listening to yourself. Like
Absolutely.
how well are you listening to yourself and seeing if what we're doing right now is a good strategy to continue, or if it's time to change something.
It's gradual, so it's like oh, it's just 1% off today. A week later, it's 2% off, and then one day you're just like angry. It's like, what the fuck is going on? And that's because you crossed one of your own little boundaries or values in there, and it's not actually the thing you want anymore. So, I think anger also labeled as frustration, is a really solid tool, a really solid sensor. Oh, where did I get off track, or where did I need to change tracks and I wasn't listening?
Interesting.
Getting sensitive to that.
Yeah, and also having the tools to be mindful enough to figure out where the source of that is coming from.
Oh, that's a whole other thing.
Because, well, I mean, I see frustration as just your ego wishes things were already different. Because that's what frustration really is. There are situations, you know, it's like Eckhart Tolle talks about this. He says there's no such thing as a problem. It's just you have a life situation. And if there's a real problem, good news, you're probably going to react to it without thinking anyway. You know, if there's something like really
real problem,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we have all these sort of more or less like artificial problems that are really just like situations that definitely would benefit from some of your attention. But really, if you're frustrated with something, it's just because your fragile ego thinks it should already be a certain way. Like, I'm frustrated that this didn't already work out, or I'm frustrated that this external thing.
Well, it'll never work out the way you think it's going to work out, for one.
Well, and trying to force it that way is a colossal mistake, right?
Yeah. There's a quote we like to use in one of our trainings, which is, suffering only occurs when you're in a argument with reality.
Oh, that's fun. Let me think about that for a second.
You're
okay.
You're unhappy with the way things are,
right?
And I'm resisting the reality. I'm resisting reality, so now I'm fucking pissed.
It's funny. It reminds me of what I say a lot now, which is pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Yeah. And
it ties right back into what you're saying. I love that idea that it's like an argument with the way things are.
Yeah. Or you're going to like this too then.
It's kind of like someone yelling at the moon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's silly afterwards. Once somebody gets right with reality, then the argument they had with reality seems comical.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why, references the cosmic giggle. And this is one of those things like, the most enlightened guy is fucking laughing his ass off all the time.
Well, even someone who's a little bit more, let's say, scientific, like a Charlie Munger, basically says the same thing. You know, it's better to see the world as it is rather than see it the way you want it to be.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing is, if you're in an argument with reality, you're living in fantasy.
Yeah, good luck.
And how effective are people who live in fantasy? They're not very effective. If you like a mathematical equation around suffering,
I would.
Yeah. Pain times resistance equals suffering. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you can bring the resistance to zero, accept what is, then the suffering goes away. The pain's still going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it's like how much you're fighting to maintain control instead of being open and receptive.
Yeah. I have this friend, she's reported the last couple of weeks, she goes, I have this feeling in my chest and I want to go away. I'm like, is it new? Yes, it's new. I was like, can you describe it to me? He's like, I don't want to say anxiety, but it feels like anxiety. Like there's something in my chest. I just want to go away. And I was like, well, what you resist will persist. Can you accept that and just be with that feeling? And she's like, I just want to go away. I'm like, the only way through is through.
It's such a tough thing to try to tell someone how useful it is to adopt a philosophy of non-interference, because human beings are naturally these meddlesome monkeys that really just can't leave well enough alone. And there are so many examples. There are so many examples of this. Like I find human beings to be the most funny, destructive, ridiculous, like all of it. We're the whole spectrum of everything. And I went to Sequoia recently to see the world's fattest tree.
Yeah.
General Sherman. It's like over 10 meters in diameter.
Holy shit.
It's so huge.
I've seen some big ones in Sequoia. I don't think I've been to that one.
Oh, dude, you gotta go. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's huge. And the story that I thought was funny, because I guess I have a twisted sense of humor, was that there was this preservation society that was trying to save the sequoia trees. So they spent like all these years putting out fires to save the sequoias. Turns out the only way that sequoias really propagate is after a huge fire.
Yeah.
Because they can tolerate it, because they have this bark that is really hard to burn, and it's full of stuff that makes it even more hard to burn. So you need a fire to kill all the competition, so these massive trees have enough space and room to grow. So they spent all these years trying to save the sequoias, right? And that's what humans want to do: save the planet, save the whales, save the snails, just save everything, right? Let's not worry about ourselves. Let's focus on some other problem that we probably can't control. But it was so funny that they actually did more damage with trying to save the sequoias than they would have if they had just left everything alone. And so this, to me, is just one more reminder that you don't have to like so tightly try to cling to everything. And the same thing when you're trying to adopt a new identity. You got to have this ability to not only let go, but also be receptive. And I think as a guy, there's definitely a tendency toward the maximal creative as opposed to the receptive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. More output, less input.
More output and less input, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely had that. It's obvious in business if you're outputting more than you're inputting, because it'll reflect in your bank account.
Black ink. It's like, you know, when people start talking about revenue, I get a little bit wary.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, do you know the word profit, or is that just like a fantasy story for right now? Because if you have, I mean, we're kind of switching gears here. Like, if you have a business that is consistently churning a profit, you have something really cool. Like, you've built something that's really neat. And if you're not required to be there all the time, then that's huge. And when it comes to behavior change, it's kind of similar. You want to think of yourself as like an architect. And that's why I think back to like what behaviors you really relish and enjoy doing. And I mean, you can definitely approach it from both angles, but ultimately the way that you are going to be satisfied with what you're doing is if you're focused on the craft as opposed to focused on the result.
Yeah, I mean, I find myself getting caught up in the result at times, and when I am focused on the craft and just being of service, everything goes so well. The profits go up, and then for something triggers me. I mean, I could name the things that trigger me.
If I showed you my bank account, you'd be super triggered.
I'd be like, oh, fuck. I had somebody at one of my trainings that was talking about, like, they were, I could tell that they like bank account stuff. I was like, you know, I was like, all right, for your practice, I'm gonna do a snapshot of my bank account once a month and send it to you.
That's funny. Yeah, it's like knowing yourself. Do you respond better to the carrot or the stick? And what do you value?
I am way less likely to get triggered by someone else's bank account, by the way.
You don't strike me as someone who'd be triggered by that.
It's usually some woman. Women will trigger me, or they have in the past. More.
Do they trigger you to achieve more so that they will love you?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I've had that happen.
I was certain that if I got a bumpy stomach and a Ferrari, that the woman would just be lining up.
Yeah.
They don't actually care that much
they don't
about
give
that.
a shit.
I had no idea.
Not the ones you want.
Not the fun ones.
No, not the fun ones. Yeah.
Well, you were the first person actually who explained to me the difference between a rag doll and a porcelain doll relationship.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a really nice distinction. And hopefully I'm not butchering it, but basically the way you described it to me was porcelain doll looks really nice on the shelf, but you can't really play with it and get it dirty. And a rag doll, you know, you toss it around, you love it, you bring it with you everywhere, and it's much more robust and adaptable and resilient. And that really put it in a perspective that I'd never really thought of before. And it just was a total mind shift.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. Probably be good to have the same kind of relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you accept you the way you are. You aren't afraid to get a little bit dirty. I mean, you know, it's like they say, no one's getting out alive, so you might as well,
No.
you know, live your most true self, right?
Yeah, and the only guarantee is that you're going to be with you until the day you die. And just
funny how that's glossed over in school.
Yeah. You're the only guarantee.
Yeah.
And yeah, make it fun. Enjoy it. Take care of yourself. Treat yourself.
Treat yourself. I remember that's what you said to me like a year ago, I think, is you only do things if they're fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's really good. I think I'm going to do that. And that's what I do now. I was triggered. I was like, man, this guy is fucking living over here. So if I want to be as cool as Mike, then I need to only do things that are fun too.
Yeah. The fun comparison scale.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you can compare to anything. I remember when I was getting into it with who could read the most books in a year with other entrepreneur friends. Dude, it's like, what a disaster that is. It's just so missing the point.
My library in Audible is way too fucking big. You know what? It was about 2 years ago I was able to let that one go.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe like I said, there's levels to this shit. 3 years ago, I let go of a piece of that, and then 2 years ago, there was a definitive moment where I go, oh. I identified one of those beliefs, right? I got one of those beliefs, which was, I started believing that I was stupid when I was around 5 years old.
Wow.
And so I developed this overcompensation pattern where I needed to, and I was homeschooled. So I actually had no one to compare myself to in regard to my intelligence.
So you probably were the dumbest one in the class.
I was definitely the dumbest. So I finished first and last. But the thing is I remember being in high school, like during those years, and having no idea where I was at on the scale. Because, you know, if you go to school and you're making all A's, then you know that the Johnny next to you is making C's. You know you're smarter than that dumbass.
Right.
So I'm going through flying blind the whole time. And I was convinced that my friends were getting a better education at school. Because I had the belief that I was stupid.
Interesting.
Right? It was always underlying. And I knew that it was there because when I would make mistakes, I was like, oh, you're so fucking stupid.
That's a huge belief. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. Like, think about how many people are listening to this who might have that same kind of belief.
That's why I'm saying it.
It's ridiculous.
You'll know. Oh man, we'll go full circle back to identity. You'll know when you have something, a belief like that it's the thing that comes up when things don't go your way. When things don't go as expected, what's the phrase that pops out of your mouth unconsciously? And so I had that one for a long time, and I knew that it existed before I was able to release it. And so I had awareness around it for a couple of years. Most people are like awareness masturbators or whatever you want to call it.
I would like some clarification before I agree with that.
They get off on awareness when they think because they're aware of it, they got it handled. And awareness in itself doesn't equal like transformation.
It's like knowledge without action.
Yeah. It's a lot of people are like, well, because they don't know what's after that. They don't know that they can shift that. And it's usually like a belief like that's tied to an emotional experience that they're avoiding, and there's a process for releasing all that, untying the belief from the feeling in their body they've been avoiding. Because really anything we're ever trying to avoid is a feeling. So we're not trying to avoid anything other than that. I don't want to feel this ever again. So I built this belief. So then I create this whole life structure so I can avoid having that feeling ever again. By the way, that feeling exists in my body. And if I avoid that feeling, now that's going to impact your movement practice. So why is it that your right side's always locked down? Well, it's a breathing thing. Well, why is it a breathing thing? It's because you're avoiding a fucking feeling that resides in your body, and that part of your body won't activate. So this is why I don't do movement stuff anymore.
Because the people who are very zealous about movement will just dismiss that kind of thing as like, oh, that doesn't really matter.
It's better just to wrap a rubber band around yourself before you train every day.
Definitely just wrap 9 rubber bands. Yeah. You know, lean on that foam roller.
Yeah, that lacrosse ball will get it.
It's funny how everybody sort of believes how powerful the brain is. And everybody sort of believes the fact that we know a small fraction of what's going on up there. But then when it comes to physical pains, it's definitely the when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
And these exercise practitioners just have their pet solution. They're like, oh, you got a knee thing? Don't worry, I got the solution for that. Meanwhile, their knee thing has nothing to do with their squat pattern, and it has everything to do with the way they feel at work.
Yeah.
And when you suggest something like that, you'll essentially be called out for being a heretic or a witch of some kind. But then meanwhile, you have someone like Dr. Ramachandran at UCSD doing the mirror box experiment with phantom limb pain. It's like, okay, this person has no hand and hand pain in the no hand.
Yeah.
But it's so crazy that a person could be experiencing some like psychosomatic back problems.
Yeah. Well, it seems like things that seem like magic, you bring up witch and heretic, and it makes me think about magic because, well,
magic?
I know some witches. And
what's magic? How would you define magic?
Well, that's exactly what I was about to go into.
That's exciting.
Yeah. We're magicians. People.
Well, I know I am. I don't know about you yet.
How? Really?
I don't know. I've never seen your magic.
Oh.
It's because
really?
Yeah, it's because I understand it.
Yes, exactly. So, like, to a magician is only a magician to the people around them, because
they're not in on the joke.
Yeah, people don't understand how you're doing your thing. Mm-hmm. He must be a magician. It's magic. I don't understand how it is. To the magician, it's obvious.
It's obvious.
That's
my other favorite word.
That's exactly how it works.
Obvious.
It's like people are like, how'd you get that conclusion? I'm like, well, like. And I started talking to him. I go, it would take me hours and hours and hours of teaching you all this stuff you need to know for you to understand what just happened.
Right.
And I'm totally down to do that, but do you want to sign up for a 6-hour workshop?
Right.
And it's like, and some people are like, yes, sign me up. I'm like, cool. And most people are like, that sounds hard. No, I don't want to know about it. I'm like, cool, I don't care either way.
Yeah.
But yeah, things that seem like magic,
well, it's so funny that you bring up the word obvious, because that's like one of my other favorite words. Yeah. Because all obvious means is that one person already knows. That's all it means. When you say the word obvious, all it means is whoever's saying that already knows.
Already knows.
That's it.
I already know.
That's it. It means nothing.
I love it.
There's no absolute obvious. What's obvious to someone who lives where we do would be a total mystery to someone who lives 3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's no absolute obvious.
Yeah.
So everybody's kind of just running around like a chicken with their head cut off a little bit, because they're not able to find that like cohesive culture. Yeah. Like our culture is very fragmented. Upbringings are very fragmented. The influence and the beliefs that you develop in school, peers, teachers, the quest for the almighty dollar, like all of these things really contribute to a rather sick individual. And I know that's kind of like a bold statement, but that's the reality. You're not going to be this, like highly tuned Zen master who's really comfortable with himself and comfortable with expressing their feminine side and stuff like that. It's going to be, like you said, an uncomfortable change, because you have to. People don't really need to learn anything new. They mostly need to unlearn.
Yeah, yeah. Unlearning is huge. Yeah, I spend more time there. Well, I was gonna go. So going.
That's probably why you're not reading as many books anymore either, right?
Going back to that is when I worked through, I found that belief, and I finally did some work. I did some personal development work that gave me the ability to pull that belief out by the root, identify what emotion I was avoiding that was associated with that belief, and really it got quiet. And I go back and forth. I hate to tell people that, I'll tell you what, the emotions and the feelings are never going away. But the beliefs associated with them, I believe, can be completely gone. That takes a lot of scrubbing that most people are not willing to do. And so it's kind of like someone goes to the doctor and they're like, oh, you're kind of fucked, here's a prescription. When, they know they're not going to go on diet and exercise.
Right.
So I'm not, if you want to completely scrub it out of your consciousness, that it is possible, but that process is fucking gnarly. And so I've done that. And in doing so, I stopped reading so many books. And the books I've read, I've enjoyed them so much more. So much more. And as you're saying, the learning versus unlearning, for me to do the things I want to get done in life well, I already know. I already know what to do. Every once in a while I run into someone and go, I gotta look that up. And I pull out my phone, and the answer is usually right there. I don't need to read a whole fucking book. And every once in a while, like I have a little book club. Yeah. And for me, it's not about getting information. It's about having an excuse to get together with some men, right, and discuss some things. Yeah. And to connect and have fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that ability to discuss things with your peers in a very open and honest way is so valuable. Yeah. And there aren't really a lot of opportunities to do that once you become an adult. Kind of like what you're saying with the phases that you go through. Yeah. Like you go to school and then you finish school and then you're magically you're an adult now. But now what? Like who do you talk to about all this shit that has just been completely ignored in your education? Yeah. I'm sorry, 12 years of public school and that's what people end up with? It's like the most colossal waste of time at best, and at worst, it is stamping out the curiosity and interest and motivation of a huge majority of the kids because you're measuring them at very arbitrary intervals in very arbitrary ways. But it's also more or less designed to make you a good factory worker rather than make you a really well-rounded person who can process their emotions and develop meaningful relationships and communicate in a way that is clear, kind, and honest.
Yeah. Well, before the factory workers, it was I think it was the Prussians who started school, and it was, how do we get these peasants to fight for us? Fuck, we need more soldiers. So they built up a decent amount of patriotism, having people say things to flags in the rooms from childhood and indoctrinate them. And I think maybe it was Woodrow Wilson who was a really big fan of what the Germans were up to, adopted a lot of what was going on back in the 1912, 1913, 1914. So it's a very curious system. It's a really good way of getting a large group of people to agree on doing something a certain way. Enough so that I will fucking kill you for it.
Exactly. Yeah, if you believe something different than I do, then you're bad. Mm-hmm. And if I remember it correctly, I think the highest literacy rate in any area of all time was actually in Nazi Germany. Ooh. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense because in order for propaganda to actually work, you need to be literate. And I remember I was talking to this friend of mine, and we had a discussion about that, about how hard it would actually be to brainwash somebody if they couldn't read. It's fucking hard.
Yeah.
Can you imagine some guy who's lived on a farm his whole life and he has common sense, and common sense is just for that area.
Totally.
So he's got his idea of how life works for him. And so if someone tried to feed him this like bullshit, he'd be like, no, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So it is super hinged on written language.
100%. The I mean, that's how the mind works. Thoughts are formed in words.
Oh, I know. I was just listening to something about that the other day.
Thoughts are formed in words, and these words are put together to make phrases and form beliefs, and it's pictures and words.
Yeah.
So if there were no words, we'd have no time, and there wouldn't be a difference between you and me. But there was a point in time where somebody made a noise, and that people started agreeing that the noise was you and me and coconut and yesterday and tomorrow. And
those are the interesting ones.
Totally.
That's like nearly unique to humans. I
Totally.
mean, very few of the other animals have the benefit of imagination and the cost of anxiety in the future. And then you have the benefit of learning and depression from the past.
Yeah.
Right? So you have this ability to exist along a timeline. You can project your mind forward and you can project your mind backward. And that has advantages and it also has a cost.
Yeah. The imagination. So the imagination is very powerful. Okay. The imagination will torture you, or you can create really amazing shit out of it. I project mine mostly into the future. Keep it out of the past.
Yeah.
But yeah, the words, I mean, was it in the beginning God spoke, or in the word?
Yeah.
But like
in the beginning there was the word.
Yeah, in the beginning there was a word.
And in I think in Islam, it's that is the main thing you see is the written word up there. Like we have, in Christianity, I got no dog in this fight. They got their lowercase t, and in Islam they have like the actual word written out in their language, I believe. So it really is all about the power of the spoken word. And there are a lot of commonalities between all the religions in that reverence for the power of words, because I think they really do understand that in order for that mind control to work, like you have to have that starting point.
It creates meaning. It's if you're not literate, then I think the words actually have a potential to mean less. Because now when you become literate, now you have a visual symbol represented inside the mind that's associated with the word.
Right.
Anyone,
a whole different part of your brain involved.
Anyone can do exercise at home. Is close your eyes and say some word. Say a phrase and see how you feel, and what there's gonna be a visual, and there's gonna be a sensation in the body. And there's a lot of the work I do, which is put you in a meditative state. Here's a bunch of phrases. I'm glossing over.
Yeah.
It's more complicated than that, but it's complex. But going, what is that? What is that bringing up for you? And it's like, okay, let's dig deeper, and through things like hypnosis and other things, really finding where that root is. That first time that you associated that belief, that word, that visual with that feeling. It's like, all right, now we got to untie these two things. Now what's possible? Oh, everything. Interesting. Because we can put someone in a place of nothing.
Yeah.
Put someone in a place of the amount of nothingness you can hold is indicative of how much possibility you can create. And so,
can you repeat that one more time?
The amount of nothingness you can hold, I'll say it like a little differently. The amount of nothingness you can hold will correlate to how much possibility you can create. And so the most powerful place to create from is nothing.
Right.
And so that's the biggest challenge for people. They're trying to create a new habit, is they are trying to create it from everything that they have.
They don't have the presence of mind to have that fresh, empty start.
Exactly. They have all the experiences from the past, all the beliefs, the thoughts, the
They're trying
emotions.
to drag it all with them into
They
this
got
new idea.
Yeah, they got like this. They're carrying all this baggage
900
and trying to get through this. I call it the tiny door. You got to go to it's also it's a tiny fucking door you got to go through. You got to lose everything. Which I've never even put this together, but now I am. I'm thinking about the Bible and the eye of the needle. Mm-hmm. The rich man can't go through in the eye of the needle in I think it was Jerusalem, was the name of a gate. And because there's the eye of the needle you would try to thread. It's fucking tiny, right?
It's hard to do that. And I think they said that the rich man has as much of a chance of getting into heaven as, a camel going through the eye of a needle or some shit like that.
So the eye of the needle was a gate in Jerusalem. Like, someone's going to get on here and be like, he's full of shit. A rabbi told me this.
This is not our expertise.
A rabbi told me this.
We're deviating slightly from our circle of competence right now.
I studied this in my youth.
All on him then.
Yeah, put it on me. Is the rich man would have to get off the camel and walk through, because only rich people have camels. And so.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, well, why would a poor person have a camel?
Well, that part makes sense.
So yeah, there was a gate called Eye of the Needle, and they would have to. The camels couldn't go.
They had to get off the camels.
They had to get off. The rich guy had to get off his camel and he had to walk like the peasants and go through the Eye of the Needle. And so I think about it as a small door, and I've been through the small door many times. Sometimes in heavy psychedelic states.
Well, it's like, what are you clinging on to that you're not willing to release? Because in order to complete that journey, whether it's through the eye of the needle or to the other side of your transformation, there are going to be things that you're afraid to let go of, right? You're afraid to kill that ego because
here's the thing.
That ego feels like a warm security blanket. It feels like it protects you, right? And quite often, what I've seen people experience is an ego developed out of need to protect them.
Yeah, it's a survival.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you have to be able to release it in order to continue on your journey. And that can be, like you said, you might have everything else totally dialed in apart from that one thing where now you don't believe you can. And that is like the one thing is. It's funny because if you believe you can and you expect you will, that's the only way you can be disappointed. And it's the only way you'll try.
Yeah.
You won't.
The only way you'll get it.
It's funny, right? Because you can't have one without the other. You have to have this belief that you can. That will cause you to try. But if you expect something and then it doesn't work out, that's the only way you can be disappointed. Yeah. And that's why I think you got to really give as much attention to what you're doing, but then detach yourself from the result as much as possible.
Yeah,
and that's not easy for people to do, including myself. Like, detaching from the result is the most liberating and maybe most difficult thing.
Yeah, the word I like to use instead of unattached or non-attachment or detached is surrender. It's like surrender to the result. That conversation, all right, there's this girl and I like her and I'm gonna throw it out there and I have no idea how she's gonna respond, but the only way for me to do it well is to surrender to whatever result it is. However she's gonna respond, it's not up to me. I throw it out there and now she responds, and so now I get a proper delivery, right? It's the only way. But if I go into it with clinging to a result, I'm gonna stutter, and I'm actually not gonna say how I really feel. I'll hold back in some way.
And it's related to what I think is one of the most important lines a person can draw. what's in your control and what's out of your control. And the stuff that's actually in your control, it's so little.
So little.
There's like 10 things maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's not that much inside your control. And when you
I'd
can
say
release
thoughts and how you direct your energy. Those are the two things that,
totally.
That's the only thing I know to do. Just thoughts and how to direct my energy. And there was a period of time where I had no idea how to do either one of those. So I was trying to control everything outside of myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, just even training your hands so they're useful really makes you feel like you have a constructive influence on your environment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one of the things that separates mankind is the language and the tools. And language is a tool.
Oh, yeah.
And, we're creators by nature. So figuring out that balance of surrendering to what's going on, but then also, we have it in us to do this disruption pretty much with technology. It's so funny. All the other animals, save beavers and one or two other things, maybe more, but there are a few.
Ants.
Yeah, there are a few things. There are a few animals that use external things to control their environment, but nothing like human beings. I mean, clothes, houses, air conditioning, cars, it is just insane. We're so separate from the way that the rest of the animals live now. And, determining, I'm searching for a way to harmonize that. That's what it is. It's how do you harmonize the more animal desires versus these more neocortex human desires? Because on the one hand, you want to live and let live and go with the flow and be this elastic, springy creature that can, adapt to your environment. And the more that you rely on tools and technology to give you what you want, the less you rely on yourself. So it's this balance.
Yeah, this can be, we're having, because it's about merging the two.
Right.
And
harmoniously.
Describing that that's something that people have to experience.
Right.
To know. For us, and maybe I haven't gone far enough to be able to describe it really, really well. But what I've been working towards more recently is I'm very aware of my emotional body. I'm very aware of my mental body. I'm obviously aware of, most people are aware of their physical body. That's the easy one. But working through the mental body and the emotional body. And my emotional body I used to suppress. Right, I have an emotion, I suppress it. That's where most people are at. And then I got to a point.
It's a good male strategy.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So not actually a good strategy.
So then I got to where I was like, okay, now I know how to let emotion flow, let the energy in my body flow. Okay, but then, which was better than suppressing it, because when I was suppressing it, it resulted in a lot of stress and bullshit. And then I got to where I was like, oh, I'm gonna let this flow. So letting a lot of flow going on. I was like, okay, well, I'm leaking a lot of energy. And it seems, and I was happy. Letting energy flow is way better than suppressing it. Energy flow is really nice. It lends itself to living a really cool life. Things are way more fun, less stress, happy, joy. These are a lot of things. I have access to a lot of things. But what I was finding was that I was like, I could be more effective. There's something that I'm not harnessing here. And so what I've been working on more recently is, okay, let the emotions do what they're doing. I'm not going to shift the energy. Usually, because I don't know how, not yet, to shift my energy without suppressing it. But what I can do is I can divert it. I can take that energy and I can focus it
in a direction. Now you're talking.
Yeah. And so it's like, oh, I had my mental body going on, I had my emotional body going on, and they weren't quite harmonized, but I was happy. It was like, okay. And there was some chaos here and there. I go, if I want to be super effective as a human being, I'm going to take that energy, I'm going to direct it right here. The third eye. And so, here we go. And
let's dance.
And that gets us down to masculine and feminine. And what I realized after the fact, after I started working on this, is the flow is the feminine. Like letting something flow. And then the constructs of the mind and all that structure is very masculine. And then being able to take the left and right side and allow that flow and direct it straight in the third eye, where I can harmonize these two things inside of myself, that is when I have experienced the most power. Like being able to
harmonizing the masculine and the feminine.
Heal the relationship between the two. Because what I have been able to do in my experiences up to this point is I can be very masculine, I can be very feminine, but the relationship between the two, there were some issues there. There was the way that they worked together, they weren't working together. It was one way or the other. I didn't know how to hold both. And through some recent training and meditation, I go, oh. And what I noticed as well is there's actual physical changes happening in the body when that happens. Directing all that energy coming up through is improving the connections between the body and the center of the brain, the third eye, and the rest of the brain, down to one single point. And if you can direct all your energy into that one point, focus like a motherfucker. And all the chatter drops away, and there's talking about obvious. Things become obvious. Things like
in the quiet.
In the quiet, it's like, oh, that's what I should do. This is what I should say. This is how this person is seeing. Like I can start seeing perspectives of other people without even talking to them. It's going, oh, cool.
Right.
The stepping outside and being the observer becomes everything's very, very quiet. The patterns emerge easily, and from moment to moment, and there's no effort to it. And that's the thing is, for the longest time I read about this, I heard people talk about this, and I was like, can I will this to happen? No.
You might be able to surrender it into happening, though.
You have to surrender it into happening. And it took, there's a lot of training involved, and there was a lot of hard knocks involved in the process, and a lot of deaths and rebirths and all that. And you get to that point, and so that's where I'm at now. That's where
it seems like you're in a really good place, especially if you've been able to feel like you are harmonizing the masculine and feminine, because I think culturally that's an uphill battle for men and women, really.
Yeah, because
if you look at the way
process, if you're going through that process, going back to people not accepting you and people judging you, that process, people are gonna fucking hate you at different times.
Oh, well, I can definitely speak to what you were talking about too, in terms of like, in my own experience, which is, really probably the only thing I'm an expert on is my own experience.
Strange.
Weird how that works. I had a pendulum swing where hyper masculine, minimum first 28 years of my life. Everything was about physical dominance in any sport that's possible. My buddy Brian used to joke that I was so competitive that I would beat a 6-year-old at tea parties. and that really was my MO. It was like, I want to be at the top of the pyramid, not second place.
No.
It's funny how that mentality can be self-sustaining, right? So everything was hyper masculine, and then I'm an extremist, so it kind of pendulum swung the other way.
I don't know what that's like.
Well, I know it's not really for you, but I enjoy taking things to their extreme. I also believe that you learn the most about something by defining the two ends of the spectrum in the middle. And that's a really good way to start when you're trying to learn about something. And the hardest thing for me to do was to reconcile the masculine and feminine back together, just like your experience. It was like, man, this masculine thing is really coming naturally to me. People seem to really like it when I'm the toughest motherfucker around. And then you swing back the other way, and you're like, well, people don't really like this, but I like it.
Yeah.
And then figuring out how to find that midpoint where you are surrendering, being receptive, but you're still moving the needle forward with the things that you believe are important and good.
Yeah. I think a lot of people talk about pendulum swinging like it's a bad thing. It's like, oh, the pendulum's going to swing. I'm
Same as being a flip-flopper. Or you've changed, man. You've changed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I like to make the pendulum, like, I watch the pendulum swing and I'm like, let's fucking make a run.
Swing it harder, right?
Let's make a run at this.
See if we can swing it over the top.
Yeah. Here's the thing: is the harder you swing the pendulum, the more pain is going to be involved. For one, but the payout is fucking huge because
risk reward.
One of the things one of the concepts I've been working with, which you're gonna love. You may use this with your group, maybe with this current group. I think it might work with what your current word is going on.
Elasticity.
Elasticity, which is range equals capacity. So you want to build your capacity, work that fucking range. How far into masculine can you go? How far into feminine can you go?
How amplitude? How much amplitude can you tolerate?
Yeah. How sympathetic can you get? How parasympathetic can you get? And if you can play with those ranges, I can get my heart rate down to 30 beats per minute. Oh, I can get it up to 180. Okay.
Right.
That range is going to give you capacity. You know.
Oh, that's so true, isn't it?
You know. So I'm a big fan of pendulum swinging hard. Some people sitting on the outside are going, what the fuck are you doing? The pendulum is swinging. What are you going to do about it? I'm like, I'm going to run harder.
Yeah. I'm going to own the full spectrum.
I'm going to own it because I want more capacity.
Right.
And when you have capacity, all that shit that's happening in the middle is just not a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of brings us back to that princess and the pea analogy once again. You know, you just become so fragile that even like the smallest thing like totally knocks you off kilter, rather than being this like really adaptable and fluid. And you know, if you don't bend, what's the other option? Break. Yeah. So you want to bend rather than break. But in order to make that big jump forward in terms of, let's call it awareness or consciousness or self-knowledge even, it's going to be really uncomfortable. Like, you're going to have to break some shit most likely, and you're going to have to destroy old parts of that ego. And
by the way, you don't know what it is you have to destroy. You'll know after you do it. If you knew what it was, you'd already done it. It's a mystery.
It's an interesting thing. What's the approach? Because I feel like we've hit a lot of really valuable points that people can start to reflect on with regard to their own life. But, you know, where does someone start this? You know, who's maybe got no experience with what we're talking about, and this is all new information, which would be super exciting for them. Where do you begin? Do you like my strategy was rent a cabin in the woods, no electricity, no books, no music, just alone with my thoughts, because I'm an extremist, right? But for someone who's just looking to explore a new path, where to begin?
I like the book The Untethered Soul.
I love that book.
Yeah.
Michael Singer.
Yeah, Michael Singer. Yeah.
That's a great book.
To me, that's Consciousness 101. You know, it's a
good rec.
If you read that book, that's a great place to start the conversation. And I mean, I have a whole pipeline.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Where can people find more about you? What you're doing right now?
So I have the Strong Coach, where we help coaches build six-figure coaching businesses. There's a huge personal development portion in there. That's the majority of it.
I can't imagine that you wouldn't have like a really well built out side of that.
Yeah. So So
it is kind of all you talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole personal development pipeline built out. I have Enlifted, which is a language course. We're talking about the power of language of the mind. If you want to work on that mental body, it's the easiest thing that you can access that we have going on. Enlifted.me. I have the Strong Coach, where we help coaches become better coaches, build coaching businesses. And then I have a Training Camp for the Soul, where we do all the emotional work. So if someone wants to do the work on the emotional body, they can come do that work. We do lock ourselves in a cabin in the woods for 5.5 days, and it's intense.
Nice.
It's not silent, but definitely moments of silence.
Yeah.
And what I've done is I've been on a journey, and I go, I want to be able to take people on this journey. And the thing is anyone who signs up for the journey that I'm like create this path is going to go through a lot faster and easier than I did.
Well, that's the whole point of having a guide.
Yeah, I ran into I don't, yeah, for some reason, I did a lot of it on my own. And I did have a lot of different guides along the way.
I know why I did a lot of it on my own.
Yeah.
I thought it was better that way.
Well, it was the best thing for you.
Well, and also if you don't ask for any help and you do it all by yourself, which is impossible, you can't do anything by yourself really. It seems better.
Well, where I've gotten in the journey is I have teamed up with people. I go, I know language is a huge component, so I teamed up with people who are the best at language.
That's it.
And then I found I went and did some work with this woman who had the best emotional training I ever encountered, and I go, let's build a business together. She goes, okay.
Cool.
And then now I'm working with Ayahuasca Retreat Center, and we're getting into the spiritual realms. Cool. So mental, emotional, spiritual. Y'all got the physical shit figured out.
It's pretty natural progression, I think.
Yeah.
I came to a similar conclusion myself, that exercise just isn't that complicated.
Yeah.
And if you keep showing up every day and you enjoy what you're doing, that's like 90% of it. And most of the things that are holding people back from the life they want, it's all their own stuff internally.
It's not a physical thing.
It's not a physical thing.
God damn it.
It would be
I wish it was.
It would be way easier if you just needed to do more squats.
Yeah. You know what though? It'd be easier, but I'd get bored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun. And it's like you said, there's only one person that's going to always be with you, and that's you.
Yeah.
And I say one final thought from me, because I think everyone should check out the stuff that you got going on, is there's no therapist in the world who's going to give you the same stimulus that talking to yourself will, or journaling will.
Journaling is
they're
huge.
different. And they're different.
Yeah. I think people are confused about journaling. Everyone.
It's confusing potentially.
Yeah. Everyone.
Like, what do I do?
Yeah. It's like you should journal. How do I do it?
Well, what's so funny is I had on my chalkboard written out, what's the best journal prompt? And then I just started laughing hysterically. I'm like, what the fuck am I even looking for the best journal prompt for?
Yeah.
I know that the idea is, what's the starting point?
Yeah.
And you can journal a couple different ways. You could say, tomorrow I will blank. Today I will blank. It could just be like a to-do list of the things that are important. You could say,
dude, my journal's all over the place.
I, Max, will do this, X, Y, and Z. Or, you can have affirmations or mantras. You know what, though? Every day, the pen touches the paper.
Yeah.
That's it. Just make sure the pen touches the paper every day, and you don't know what you're going to write. And everybody's different.
The way you can improve your journaling practice is do some training around language. You do training around language, like what I have. Do that, and then apply those principles in your journaling. Mm-hmm. And journaling is like meditation, and I think journaling is for someone who's literate and can read and write is more powerful than meditation, especially in the beginning. I think it's a prerequisite to meditation.
That's bold. I love it.
Yeah, and there's all these meditation apps and guided meditations, but there's very little training on journaling. And so I like having the reason people don't continue journaling is because, or meditating, is because they don't get an instant result, right? And so it's like, oh, I journaled, but all right, I got shit to do now. Right. And so if you study, if you do take language courses, if you do things like in Lifted, what will happen is you take that and you apply to your journaling practice, and what will happen is you'll get something out of it that day. You can see a shift immediately in your writing. It can change your state. It can change how you approach your day. It can shift your perception in an instant. And when people start getting instant results, which you can get with journaling, then it becomes addictive.
Oh yeah. I
carry my journal with me all the time. People make fun of me. I carry a journal and I've got a little bag of colored pens. Oh, Mike's got his colored pens again. And I'm journaling throughout the day, like constantly writing. And I've had this practice for a few years now. And I was listening to Richard Branson's book, and he was talking about...
Which one?
I don't know.
Older one?
I don't know. I only know of one. I downloaded it on Audible.
Is it the autobiography that goes through the whole thing?
No.
Okay, it's different.
Yeah, he was talking about, like, you know, if you want to be an effective person, be writing that shit down. You should have your notebook open during meetings and writing it down. And I was like, yeah, of course.
The faintest ink is stronger than the most powerful memory.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so once I understood how to use language, journaling, because you can create, right? Mm-hmm. You can actually be a creator.
Well, you can organize your thoughts.
Absolutely.
Which is something we talked about so much today already. Yeah. It's like how important it is to have a cohesive structure to the way that you think about things. And I think writing in sentences and phrases and words is awesome. And if you can get to the point where you can start connecting concepts with geometric shapes and lines and graphs and things like that.
Just pull out my journal. I got some shapes.
Oh, dude, we should compare journals. It's great because all of those things are going to create a different sensation in your brain. And it doesn't matter. Whether or not what you believe is what everybody else believes. It matters how you can cohesively organize that data yourself.
Yeah.
And the more you write things down, the more you find yourself coming back to some of the same points. And you're like, oh, wow, I obviously really care about this a lot. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I have in my notebook, what I was doing for a while is I was writing how many days old I was on the side.
Oh, wow.
And then I would just start writing. And I was like, oh, I'm like 11,342 today. And it's a weird perspective to start it from. But I would just start writing about what's important, what I'm thinking about, what's on my mind. It's a really interesting way to think about the world. But I can't say enough good things about journaling other than there is no viable substitute, to borrow an economics term.
I'm still tripping out over the days old instead of the date.
Oh, just how many days? The date doesn't really matter, does it?
No. Well, it helps me find if I'm going to look back.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I find myself not looking back very often.
It's funny how it can still be really effective even if you don't review.
Oh, yeah.
I've been doing a little review the past week, actually, for the first time in a while. What a trip.
I reviewed all my notes from last week because I was
yeah.
If I'm doing a special experience,
I
gotta review it.
I basically reviewed some stuff from the last couple years.
And
it was,
woo!
Oh man, I have a notebook where I switched from print to cursive, one page to the next.
I switched back to cursive because of a conversation we had.
You know why? It's because I said, when you print, you're writing in letters, and when you do cursive, you're writing words.
Mm-hmm. And
the
thing is all throughout my childhood, I wrote in cursive, and it was nice. I enjoyed it. Print was hard. I went in the Navy. It required print, and then I just stopped writing in cursive at that point. And picking it back up's been so nice.
Oh,
so nice.
Yeah, and
the ladies love it.
There's an artistry to it.
Totally.
and it's definitely meditative. I think 10 minutes of writing in cursive every day would probably, I mean, who knows what kind of positive effect that could have on somebody's life. And that's just as, you know, one of the things I keep coming back to stay-ish on point is what's the action that's going to really move the needle a lot without too big of a time investment? Because we are kind of operating within the restrictions of opportunity cost. You can do anything, but you can't do everything.
That's right.
And journaling is one of those things, along with a morning movement flow, and especially flow movement in general, with crossing the midline and keeping you focused on a thing. It's like for less time than one sitcom, you can make like the most monumental positive change.
Yeah, I remember having a hard time finding time to journal, and now it's fucking funny.
Yeah,
I've got less time now than ever because, you know, I'm older and I'm closer to the end, and I still the journaling calls me more. Yeah,
if anything, for me, because I tend to be very cerebral, I have to restrict myself from writing too much because I just want to always be making notes. I'm like, oh, that was such an interesting phrase. Like, oh, look at the way those words fit together. It's like so funny. But anyway, so where's the easiest place to find you?
TheStrongCoach.com.
TheStrongCoach.com.
Yep.
Hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any comments, please leave them below wherever you find this video. And you can find me at MaxShank.com. And that's basically it.
So,
thank you, my brother.
Thank you.
Fun.
That was fun.
I love chatting with you.